This video is 2 weeks late, thanks to Hurricane Beryl. Every time I sat down to write it, something related to repairs or lost business immediately came up. Before we were so rudely interrupted, I had a lovely biographical video talking about the Golden Khan and his rise to power. Unfortunately, this man is hampered by his location. It's hard for horse warriors to attack mountain-heavy nations to the east and west, sparse tundra to the north, and a southern neighbor that's their best trading partner. There's a reason why the Mongol hordes have never attacked Colorado. He gets a reprieve in the 1005 timeline, but his past is still the same regardless. I'm Mr. Welch. Are we ready to meet the leader of Ethengar? Yes, we Khan. Moglai of the Merket was born in 957 in his clan's ancestral lands. His father was Adakai Khan, the leader of the Merket, and a significant influence on Moglai's life. Ethengar wasn't as built up as it was back then. It's nowhere near as cosmopolitan as it currently stands. Because thanks to Moglai, they went from no cities to one city. And it was common to take leadership by being the last guy to die. This happened to Adakai Khan when something he was poisoned with disagreed with him and he promptly keeled over. Moglai was now the rightful leader of the Merket clan at age 12, but he had to pass his first test of leadership, which was not getting killed by his uncle Adakai, who apparently was a huge Lion King fan. Thus Moglai escaped into the wilds of Ethengar, where he became a nomad's nomad, avoiding not just his uncle's minions, but the traditional enemies of the Merket. And back then, all of Ethengar was enemies with each other. The future Golden Khan remained in Ethengar for 6 years until he turned 18. His uncle made him an offer to let him live if he just submitted to being a slave, but this is Moglai we're talking about. He wasn't born to live on his knees. He survived alone until he became a man, which isn't easy in Ethengar, especially when a large clan is hunting for you. Moglai realized he would never regain his birthright on his own. He needed experience, allies, and a plan. So he left Ethengar to acquire all three. He wandered Rockholm, Yularum, Thyatis, Denver, and Karamikos for 3 years. And there's a good chance that Moglai would have taken part in the numerous rebellions Duke Stefan was dealing with at the start of his nation. Moglai returns home with several allies, a newly found respect for foreign militaries, a copy of the Liber Tacticus, and a question he would really like his uncle to answer. Remember that offer to be a slave? Same question. He returned to Merket lands, claimed his bride, declared himself the rightful ruler of the Merket, and demanded his uncle serve him. A few Merket warriors loyal to his claim backed him. He took this small group and started a war with his uncle's larger force. Moglai won the first battle, and then the second one, and then kept on winning. He brought with him strategies from the greatest empire on the continent. He knew the weakness of the traditional Ethengarian methods compared to the new and more refined strategies from Yularum and Thyatis. He brought a powerful Yulari wizard to serve as his advisor and field artillery. He embraced new ways and allies to get what he wanted, the Merket clan. The followers of Ethengar tradition debated on whether his adoption of foreign ways was good or bad. But one thing was certain. Good, bad. He was the guy with the dwarven mercenaries. The Merket Civil War was a one-sided affair. Adakai never stood a chance against his nephew. The usurper fought using the traditional methods of the Ethengar. Moglai exploited that and won every battle he intended to win. He would fake defeats to lure out more of Adakai's army. As it became clear who was winning this war, most of Adakai's forces defected to Moglai. Finally, the uncle surrendered his last remaining troops to Moglai to spare them. The new Khan offered to spare his uncle if he would become a servant, but both knew that would never happen. Adakai refused, and Moglai had him strangled with a bowstring, the traditional method of execution of a Khan. Then he gave his uncle an elaborate funeral, which, despite his betrayal, he was still a Khan of Ethengar. Moglai was not satisfied with ruling over the Merket clan. The nation had been fractured into hundreds of minor clans, constantly fighting over minor territory or other long-forgotten slights for far too long. Moglai wanted revenge on the traditional enemies of the Merket, which was no small number. He also wanted to send a message to the rest of the nation that he was not to be tested. But first he needed to prove his worth. This would require a pilgrimage to the most dangerous location in all of Ethengar. He had to climb the World Mountain to prove his worth. There's not much known about Moglai's journey across the land of black sand or his ascension to the mountain. He took numerous spirit shamans, his closest advisors, and no small amount of bodyguards. The journey was dangerous, the climb was almost suicidal, and not all of them made it. But he did reach the spirit world. He conversed with the spirit lords and was given their blessing that he was destined to be the Golden Khan, the greatest leader Ethengar would ever know. He returned with the expedition survivors and let them tell his story. After all, without witnesses, no one would believe him. The Merket went from loyal to almost fanatical. Other minor clans swore allegiance, and it was all he needed to bring the unification of Ethengar. First, he targeted the Murgar clan. Where they were fragmented like most Ethengar clans, the Merket attacked as one. He showed no mercy to his ancestral foe. Every Murgar male taller than a wagon wheel was put to death, and the survivors were absorbed into the Merket clan. This let the rest of the nation know that he was not messing around regarding warfare. After the destruction of the Murgar clan, he turned his attention to the smaller but no less dangerous Hajik clan. This time, he didn't wait, attacking all the various tribes of the Hajik at once and giving them the same fate as the Mughar. Where it took months to destroy the Mughar, the Hajik were eradicated in less than a month. Numerous minor clans immediately swore allegiance. Moglai's biggest issue was the Merket was one of the largest clans, but there were dozens of equal size. So he turned to diplomacy. One clan fighting another usually ended up with both mauled at the war's end. So he offered various clans the full might of his to fight alongside them in exchange for allegiance. Numerous great clans were defeated in this method, with Moglai gaining even more power as other khans either swore loyalty or were crushed in the resulting war. Rival tribes of equal status realized there were no stopping him and also swore loyalty out of self-preservation. Plus, those who submitted willingly were given generous rewards by Moglai. He knew how to use the carrot just as well as the stick. In 996, the last of the clans swore allegiance to the Merket. Moglai of the Merket is now the Golden Khan. He is not a physically imposing man, standing at 5'7", which is average for Ethiopia. But he is above average in every ability, with a high charisma and above average intelligence. His greatest strength is adapting the older ways for newer and more successful methods. He learned well from his studies abroad, adopting foreign tactics greatly aided his ascension. He brought back heavy infantry from Rockham, battle wizards from Yalarim, new tactics and formations from Tyatis, and the concept of heavy cavalry from Karamikos. He has introduced methods of warfare that no other Khan would even consider. Hiding archers in the high grass until it was time to stand and fire would have been deemed cowardly by traditional Ethengarian commanders, but it won him numerous battles. He brought dwarven artillery to mow down enemy formations from a distance. Pike walls decimated rival clan charges. He still favors light cavalry tactics, but his enemies were hindered by only having a small number of options available against a man who studied war across the continent. Some might have considered him dishonorable, but Ethengarians respected victory more than anything else. And for those that bent the knee, he did pay very well. Moglai could not have gotten where he was without his advisors, and he still swears by today. Ahmed ibn Yusuf is Moglai's primary advisor and the most feared by the Ethengar. He is a wizard from Yalarim that Moglai encountered during his exile. Despite religious differences, the bond between the two men is unbreakable. Ahmed convinced Moglai that he needed a permanent base of operations from which to rule. The wizard has noticed that the natives view him with great suspicion, so he plays up the mysterious outsider to make them fear him even more. He never speaks publicly, only whispering into Moglai's ear when necessary. He helps maintain the logistical side of running the nation, which Moglai appreciates, but still keeps an eye on, just to understand how it's done. Giml the Horse Warrior is the second member of Moglai's inner circle, and serves as the commander of the Dwarven Engineers and Mercenaries. He got his name not because of his mounted combat, but because he's fought horses more than once. He's not a fan of them, and they don't like him either. And they have thrown fists and hooves on more than one occasion. He saved Moglai from some orcs, and the Khan offered him a spot in his entourage. Once Moglai had regained his birthright, Giml returned to Rocco, then promptly returned because he missed his friend. Giml leads the dwarven part of Moglai's army and serves as a military advisor and bodyguard. He's an integral part of the Khan's plans, as younger dwarves are flocking to his cause in search of glory, gold, and sticking it to the Glantrians. Jamal is the leader of the Keshak, the Khan's bodyguard. She also holds the distinct reputation for being the only person alive to have wounded Moglai Khan and lived. She was loyal to Adakai, and in the last battle between the men, she fired an arrow that struck Moglai in the arm. After the battle, the Khan demanded to know who fired the arrow, and Jamal proudly stepped forward expecting to be executed. Instead, she was complimented for her marksmanship, rewarded for her honesty, and given position of authority in Moglai's army. Now she's constantly at his side and one of his staunchest followers. She's small, not even 5 foot tall, but is a superb rider and one of the best shots in Ethengar. Few outsiders recognize her as one of the best commanders Ethengar has to offer, which is how she likes it. Conchi is Moglai's spiritual advisor and accompanied him to the World Mountain. He saw the potential in Moglai when he returned to Ethengar and suggested that if he was destined for greatness, he would need to gain the blessings of the Spirit Lords. Conchi later received a prophecy directing Moglai to winter in the area known as Barga. The Khan took his teacher's advice and was rewarded for it by the immortals and the spirits. The shaman also advises other leaders of Ethengar, but always speaks in riddles. It's only with Moglai that does he speak plainly. Only the Golden Khan is worthy of the direct wisdom of the spirits. Mangi is the oldest son of Moglai and the heir apparent. He is currently serving as a Keshak in the service of Jadan Khan. He has just come of age and is eager to learn everything he can before he takes over the rule of Ethengar. He is loyal to his father and understands that he has still much to learn. He's young, just 18, but he is a respected warrior. He has been informed that he is joining the horse warriors at the lowest rank, and he will be expected to rise in rank without any favoritism. He's a bit rash and loves the comforts of court, so harsh military life will be challenging, at least for a while. Sabak serves as Moglai's personal Hakuman and is the least liked of all of his advisors. Despite being one of the most powerful spellcasters in Ethingar, he's also known as being one of the biggest dicks. Moglai Khan keeps him around because it pays to keep the man who can make people go boom happy. The issue is Sabak likes to amuse himself at the expense of others, often putting people's lives in danger for his own amusement. He doesn't actually physically harm them, but he uses enchantments or illusions to put themselves in danger. The other advisors tolerate him but don't like him. Even his advice is of frequently little use, but due to his abilities, he is allowed to speak. He attends the meetings because they amuse him, more than out of loyalty to the Khan. Bakai is the oldest daughter of Moglai, who has been married off to Batu Khan of the Bortok clan in a political marriage. She is the apple of Moglai's eye, and he has doted on her since birth. By dote, I mean he trained her in secret to be one of the deadliest assassins in Ethingar, and she loved every minute of it. She is only there to test the loyalty of Batu, whom Moglai suspects of attempting to assassinate Mangi. Moglai is correct about this, and if Baku finds the evidence she needs, she has orders to gut him like a fish. This would put her as the head of the Bortoks, which would make them an extension of the Merket. This is more than a possibility. Batu is nowhere near as smart as he thinks he is. Moglai has 3 wives, but only married the first out of love. Abatai is from the Merkets, and he first encountered her while on the run from his uncle. She's a strong-willed woman, devoutly loyal to her husband, and speaks with his full authority. She has bore him 5 of his 13 children, and has educated all of them in the art of war and politics. When Moglai returned from his exiles, one of the first things he did was reunite with Abatai, who was being held as a political prisoner by his uncle for obvious reasons. He found her alone in her yurt with her husband from an arranged marriage, his bodyguards, and several of his warriors having recently passed away, like 10 minutes previous before Moglai arrived recently. Fortunately for Abatai, a low Thako is a huge turn-on for that man. It's been said that Abatai's bodyguards are more for show and to keep her from killing those who offend her. She understands why Moglai has taken other wives, and while she's cold towards them, she respects why they're there. The other 2 wives are Tanai and Orus. Tanai is the second wife from the Tajit clan, who was married to Moglai to cement an alliance between the 2 clans. She is content being the second wife, has no ambitions outside of providing for Moglai's children, and does take care of most of them. She lacked an adventurous streak, but is well liked around the Golden Court because of her honest and friendly nature. Orus is the youngest of the wives and the mother of the 2 youngest children. She is a political marriage, again, this time from the Urgir clan. She is the most adventurous, as she is young and thinks she still has much living to do. She will ride out with her Keshaks to explore as much as she is allowed. She also dislikes Abatai as she sees her as stifling. Abatai runs the Golden Court behind the scenes, allowing her husband to rule the nation without worrying about domestic strife. The tension between the 2 wives is a rivalry. They aren't looking to have each other killed. They both know their place, and their politics is more like a game they play. Moglai Khan's fate will be determined by the timeline you choose. In 1010, he's pretty much a punching bag for the immortals because all of his plans fall apart, his invasions fail, and his armies begin to doubt him. And eventually he ends up dying trying to invade Glantry, despite his grasp on the problems with such an invasion, a significant plot point with keeping the clans together. Moglai wants to invade Glantry, but he knows sending any force through the narrow passes negates his numerical advantage. This is the reason why he's diversifying his military. He needs methods to counter Glantry's advantage, which will take time to develop. In 1005, he goes for easier prey after ambushing the Hulian forces during the Masters' War because of an attempted assassination. He doesn't bother attacking the southern nations, they've been devastated. Instead, he goes after the western nations that avoided the war, like Windar. It's not as profitable doing this, but with Hul bled dry during the war, he knows the wealthy nation is an easier target once he gets there. That's Moglai Khan. He's supposed to be the biggest threat to the known world, but never gets his chance. He's got an excellent group of advisors, a family that supports him, and his armies adore him for the time being. He will need to win some victories or they will turn on him, something 2nd edition talked about at length, and then had him lose every battle he fought. The guy deserved better. Next week, I'm scraping up what I can about the nation of Mania, which is just across the strait from Belisara on Skothar. There's almost nothing mentioned about them, so I'm going to be making most of it up. Challenge accepted. Until then, ride, Captain, ride.